North Carolina is attempting to enact a lot of laws that really are not beneficial to its people. In this particular case, HB 873 is a bill that on its surface would help to allow lower income people to attend 5 colleges or universities in North Carolina. How it would do so would be to reduce the maximum tuition per semester to $500 from approximately $1,500. On the surface, that looks great. The reduction in tuitions obviously creates a revenue shortfall, which the legislature claims they will make up. The only problem with this is the legislature that is putting into effect the reduction in the amount of tuition cannot legally tie any future legislature in providing the necessary funding for these 5 schools, of which 3 of them are HBCU schools. Also within the bill was a requirement that one of the schools change its name. What that has to do with funding is beyond me. Now, the legislature claims that they're doing this in order to get more people into the schools, but 2 of the 5 schools that are mentioned in the bill are at near capacity. So why these 2 schools are being included in the bill doesn't make sense. Now, the actual author of the bill has done an interview, and you can see that this man has an attitude regarding the pushback that he has gotten because of this bill. And in my mind, there's something else up here. Anyway, let me play the clip from News One now, and you can judge for yourself what's going on here.
On yesterday, at a rally led by supporters of HBCUs dealing with Senate Bill 873. We've been covering this story since that bill was introduced that would slash tuition in 5 state schools to $1,000 a year, $500 a semester. But that, of course, would cause those schools to lose tons of funding. Legislature says, well, we'll go ahead and put that money back into the schools. But that means they would have to ask for the money every single year. Opponents of the bill made sure all voices were heard.
Whether you know it or not, our future in education is in jeopardy. The historical black colleges and universities of North Carolina are at risk of becoming extinct. We are in jeopardy. Senate Bill 873 proves this. A direct attack on our education, culture, and future.
This is what alumni and students coming together looks like. This is what student power looks like. We are advocates for student power, and we encourage everyone to reach out to Black universities so that we can start empowering each other and have HBCU solidarity across the state.
The key to opportunity in this country is education. And without question, there is no doubt about the impact that historically black colleges and universities have had on this nation and on our state. We are fortunate in North Carolina to have 10 HBCUs, 5 public and 5 private. And those 10 institutions have an impact of upwards of $2 billion annually on our state's economy.
We all agree we have to preserve HBCUs, both public and private. Going forward, we need to bring the best minds and the best experience to ensure we do that. Anything less casts a shadow and a question on what the legitimate purpose is and what will be the outcome. How do we sustain whatever plan we have? How do we sacrifice and recognize the benefit of having that plan? If we do not do that, we will not have all the stakeholders at the table. We will not have all the stakeholders faithfully participating, and the plan will not succeed.
When I see young men come and young women come to our institution every year with the commitment to learn and the willingness to contribute to society, we cannot afford to close not one door at a historically black college. What we should be talking about is how can we increase the number of students who are attending historically black colleges. That's the discussion that needs to be held in the state of North Carolina. With the words of Angela Davis, if they come for you tonight, they will come for us tomorrow.
What we have seen across this country has been a consistent effort to undermine historically black colleges and universities from the moment they started. I asked someone the question, and I assume the answer. I want to be sure. I asked the question, when was the article passed that they're basing this on? That is Article 9 in your state constitution. What they are doing is they are literally using a law that was driven through the process by freed slaves to now hurt the ancestors of those freed slaves in 2016.
As a recipient, beneficiary, and product of an HBCU, I am proud that we put out the best and we put out the brightest. We have corporations from all over America who come and draw from our wealth and our human capital. It is time that we stand up and demand that this legislature, instead of just taking of our fruit, you better feed the root. And when you're feeding the root, make sure you put the appropriations in place that we all can survive and thrive.
All right, folks on the panel to talk about this particular effort, we have Dr. Greg Carr, Afro-American Department Chair at Howard University, Shermichael Singleton, a Republican political strategist, Lauren Victoria Burt, Managing Editor of Politic365.com, Will Jawando, a former White House official with President Barack Obama. Folks, here's what's finding me interesting. First of all, guys, do we have the video of the sponsor? He gave an interview with a local reporter saying that that he may very well pull the HBCUs out of this bill because he's hurt. Right. He's hurt that he is being attacked. And that he saw this as a very good thing. It was that he sounded like Donald Trump at his vets rally saying, you know, why aren't y'all giving me credit for doing this when the fact of the matter is they've cut $1 billion for higher education. Second of all, the bill initially was to study changing the names of the schools. Then the fundamental problem with this particular bill is that the General Assembly cannot tell future General Assemblies how to fund the schools. So when they say we'll give the $70 million back, there's no guarantee those schools will get that money every year. Yeah.
See, and that's the problem. This assembly obviously could vote to give the $70 million this year. But if you look at North Carolina and its recent trend, it has been cutting the educational budgets of all of the public schools, both university and pre-K to 12th year education. So if it's cutting its overall education budget, what makes you think that it's going to maintain the amount of money needed in order for the HBCUs to run properly? My opinion, this is just a smokescreen in order to do those institutions harm.
Every state legislature plays this game with HBCUs, particularly if there's a Republican governor, which there is in North Carolina. And HBCU funding, I think HBCUs, quite frankly, over the last 8 years have had the hardest time they've been having in about 3 decades. On the federal level and on the state level. Obviously on the federal level they have Parent Plus and some other policy decisions by the Obama administration, namely 2 years free community college, etc., which would have hurt HBCUs. And on the state level it's always been a struggle. So The last thing we need to hear is another attempt to, and I love how it's veiled. It's got something, the bill's got some name like, you know, the Funding of Colleges Act or something like that. And obviously the intent is to defund HBCUs.
Right, well, it's so interesting, Roland, because, you know, as a Republican, and Lauren, you and I talk about this often. We talk about crime rates and how we want to lower crime rates in these inner cities, and we want to give opportunities to these struggling kids from single-parent households. Yet we have an opportunity to potentially do that by giving access to a quality education, and what we're essentially saying is, no, we're going to take the money away. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
They put two things in conflict, right? Affordability. We've heard the Obama administration talk about that. They said we want to make it affordable, and then in the bill, when you look at the language of the bill, they talk about graduation rates. They talk about improving that. They talk about, you know, the fact that people come out in debt, $23,000 average in debt. But what you see is the name change thing is very important in this. Public legislation that follows in the suit of stuff like the Louisiana court decisions, the Mississippi stuff, Ayers versus Fordyce, the Geyer decision in Tennessee. The first thing you want to do is change the name. Why? We're trying to change the complexion of these institutions.
Right.
But when you push it as affordability, my friend at Winston-Salem State, the dean, Corey Walker, has said there are many moving parts, but there's one objective, which is why I thought it was very interesting and very encouraging to see all those black colleges standing in solidarity.
Roland, let's back up 1 second. Affordability, if the issue is affordability, which is an issue in higher education across the country, right?
Exactly.
Obviously. And, you know, black institutions, you know, when the general public has a cold, you know, we have the flu, right? And so HBCUs fall into that category. If you're the state senate in North Carolina, which we need to be leery of anyway with the stuff that they've been passing around transgender and voting rights, but if you're the Republican majority there, why not raise funding for higher education?
Right.
You know, down 20% since 2008. And so the idea that you're going to take something good and make it look like you're increasing funding across the board, but you're not.
Right? Because they said they're going to subsidize scholarships for A&T in North Carolina Central, which is why it's very encouraging to see A&T and Central students out there. Yes. And the president is saying,
if it was an affordability issue, you would do it through Pell, or you would do it through some direct help to the student.
Raise funding.
It's clear, I mean, it's the same old game of, you know, trying to hurt HBCUs, but of course never declaring it. So from a PR standpoint, as usual, the North Carolina GOP has their PR game down. Of course they're not going to come out and say, okay, we're going to cut HBCUs.
Here's what's interesting. So Tom Apodaca, who was a state legislator, Republican, who pushed this effort. This is what he said: I've also been disappointed in being called a racist and a bigot. And he said, talked about how he was trying to do the right thing. And then he literally gave an interview where he said, you know, well, fine, you know, we'll figure out some other ways how to do good with this money. I mean, it was very paternalistic, very arrogant.
With what money?
And right. It was interesting though, because first of all, because of the pressure, he is now saying the 3 HBCUs are going to be removed from the bill. Now, first of all, I want to actually see it happen before I take his word. So the pressure that's been on his behind, Shermichael, is causing him to respond. But my problem is this here. As opposed to you saying, well, I want to slash these 5 schools, and one of them is his alma mater, Western Carolina.
Which they have at the end.
Right, but also the reasoning he gave was to increase enrollment. But Western Carolina is almost at maximum enrollment. UNC Pembroke also at maximum enrollment.
Why not?
So,
it's not about
if that's the motive, how is it the motive when 2 of the 5 are at maximum enrollment?
If that's the motive, again, like you say, Roland, is to increase the amount of students enter into these institutions, why not figure out ways to increase funding so these institutions can build new buildings, hire new professors?
Because that is the motive.
That is logical.
And so, in fact, I told the folks yesterday, because I was a meeting with community leaders and state legislators, I said, y'all should follow the lead of the folks in Maryland and follow what happened in Mississippi.
That's exactly.
And in fact, in the meeting, I even called Alvin Chambliss, who was a lawyer, who argued the case in Mississippi that went all the way to the Supreme Court. They got them the funding. I said, y'all should sue the state of North Carolina for not funding these schools.
What did they say?
From day one.
Because that really is the tragedy.
Well, it was interesting.
Alvin Chambliss is a hero, man. He really should be their consultant.
No, seriously. Seriously, sitting in the meeting, they said, well, that's one of the things we talked about. I said, no, this ain't talking. I said, the threat of the lawsuit would then force them to step up. And I said, you know what? Because again, y'all, I don't sit there and play around with it. I literally said, fine. I literally called Alvin Chambliss in the meeting.
Good.
And put him on speakerphone and say, y'all need to call him. Because You see the suit right now in Maryland.
Yeah.
The only way you're going to force the hand of these HBCU, of the states, is that they actually join together and file lawsuits against the state to get the money.
Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Going on for years.
Yeah.
And DOJ needs to step up on stuff like that. They step up on other things, but that has been going on for years in a lot of states, certainly not just North Carolina, but a lot of southern states they just don't fund them.
Well, you know, it's interesting. We were at a continuing legal education forum at the NAACP convention last summer, and Alvin Chambliss and I both talking about Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Right.
That's what it's for.
Right.
And Chambliss was trying to convince these folks to think about that as a real weapon, because they were going to close Mississippi Valley. They were going to absolutely downgrade Jackson State, and that war. In fact, I first met Alvin Chambliss as a clerk for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, because what sent me to law school was the Geyer case in Tennessee. They wanted to change the name of Tennessee State to the University of Tennessee at Nashville. Part of the problem is a lot of these public HBCUs are in state capitals, and they are the public institution in those capitals. They want those institutions. So maybe you shut them down and reimagine them.
Right. And, hold on. So, Apodaca, you talked to the local reporter. I want to play some of that. Y'all go ahead.
We're trying to have them survive. And what really upsets me is my alma mater is in this bill, and I would do nothing to hurt my alma mater. I met my wife there, my 2 children graduated from there, so I'm extending this across the state geographically. But you know, I'm to the point now, if perhaps they don't want to be in this bill, I'll be willing to take them out. And we'll just do one campus, because I've never tried to help people in my life and be treated so poorly and be called names that I was called yesterday by Reverend Barber. And I'm hurt. So trying to help people, but they don't want to be helped, I can't do anymore.
So your school is Western Carolina?
Yes. I was on the board of trustees there. My wife and I met there. My 2 sons graduated from there. And Lord knows I love nothing like Western Carolina University and would never do anything to hurt it. And this was a way to help everybody rise. But if they don't want it, that's fine with me.
So the next question then is, what happens next if you're willing to take them out of the bill? What does that look like?
I guess they can just go their way like they're going now without any additional assistance. We're just trying to help keep our HBCUs. Now, the legacy will always be there. We want the universities to be healthy and to thrive, and they're not right now. Some of them are, most of them aren't, because, you know, kids have decided to go elsewhere. So we're just trying to help with that. But, you know, if they don't want the help, that's fine. We can certainly spend that $70 million somewhere else.
Last question.
Yes, sir.
So what does it look like then if you're going to take them out? Is that just you saying that?
No, I very well. I'm thinking about it now. After the responses I've had the last 24 hours, I'm going to probably file an amendment and just take them out and let them continue.
So what he's saying is, y'all don't, it's fine. Y'all ain't getting more money. As opposed to, Jeremiah, go ahead. Look on your face, about your fellow Republican, you look a little astonished. Hold on a second. Go ahead.
I mean, I am, because again, as I was just whispering to Lauren as we were watching this video, there's a huge opportunity here, and really when we talk about this, Republicans are always talking about how we want to outreach to people, we want to grow the tent and reach new communities. We have an opportunity to go into urban centers, give money to these institutions to hire new professors, to build new buildings, to get the resources they need, lowering crime, provide economic opportunity, possible entrepreneurship. I can go down the line. Why wouldn't you want to provide a logical and substantive policy to make that happen?
And we're
not seeing that.
Hold on.
He seems to think that cutting the tuition would somehow increase the money.
It increases the money. He was saying the other institutions, a lot of students are going to these institutions, they're going to other institutions.
But that's
of course, the other institutions have money.
The issue's always
they can offer scholarships.
Let's back up to we want to help them survive. Let's just which is the way he starts the clip. We've been surviving for 500 years, right? You know, and thriving.
Kentucky State, Kentucky State, Bluefield State. In other words, they'll always have a historical mark on the campus, but we want your property.
The paternalism, you know.
And in fact, and one of the folks yesterday said these campuses have extremely valuable property.
Of course they do. Yeah. And I was recruited. You know, look, I'm a proud North Carolina Central alum.
Yes, sir.
Went there, played basketball, got recruited by Western Carolina, didn't go, went to North Carolina Central. And the idea that we're going to just you're going to help us survive? These schools have been thriving, produced so many graduates, and that, okay, if you don't want to accept this deal where we change your name,
you don't want it, well, then you figure out what you're going to do.
Right.
Versus saying, let's come up with another way.
A missed opportunity.
Well, no, that's called showing real motive. That's called real motive. That's why North Carolina, y'all should be filing a class action lawsuit against the state of North Carolina for severely underfunding HBCUs historically. And so what we're going to actually do is on Monday's show, we'll reach out to Alvin Chambers and have him on the show so he can explain to y'all what he did in Mississippi and what he's been trying to tell other folks across the country when it comes to suing these states not funding HBCUs. Up next.
All right, so anyway, you saw Tom Apodaca, and I don't know about you, but the attitude of that man completely turned me off. I mean, that man was arrogant. How dare you question my motives and what I'm doing? No, it don't work like that. And hopefully the people will wake up, get this attorney that was successful in Mississippi and other states to file a lawsuit in North Carolina to get them the necessary funding that is called for in order to make sure that they follow the letter of the law under the Carolina Constitution as far as education is concerned.